The cold marble of the morgue was my last memory. My husband's laughter echoing in my ears as my heart finally gave out. Now I'm staring at my reflection swathed in a custom Vera Wang gown. I didn't just survive my murder. I woke up on my wedding day. Death doesn't come with a white light or a montage of your best memories. For me, it came with the bitter taste of cyanide hidden in a glass of Dom Perignon, served by the man I had just spent 3 years calling my husband. In my previous life, Liam Cross was the charming tech wonderkind who swept the heirs of Hastings Holdings off her feet. I gave him everything: my heart, my family's pristine reputation, and most importantly, the capital he needed to take his startup cross-tech public on the NASDAQ. I loved him with a blinding, pathetic devotion. I didn't see the glances he shared with my cousin Savannah. I didn't notice the offshore transfers to UBS accounts in the Cayman Islands. I only noticed when the paralysis set in during our anniversary trip to the Hamptons as I choked on the floor of our primary suite, while Liam and Savannah stood over me, waiting for my pulse to stop so they could inherit my empire. "You were always so gullible," Jimmy Savannah had whispered, nudging my limp hand with her Jimmy Choo stiletto. "Don't worry, we'll throw you a beautiful funeral." I gasped, my lungs inflating with violent force. My eyes snapped open. I wasn't on the hardwood floor of the Hamptons estate. I was sitting on a plush velvet chair. The scent of Joe Malone's orange blossom hung heavy in the air, mixing with the sharp smell of hairspray. "Hold still, Miss Hastings." "Just finishing the contour," a voice murmured. I blinked against the glaring vanity lights. Brigitte, my favorite makeup artist, was dusting my cheekbones with a Chanel brush. I looked down. My hands were trembling, clutching a bouquet of white peonies. I was wearing the dress, the custom pearl-encrusted Vera Wang gown that had taken 6 months to make. I snatched my iPhone 14 Pro from the vanity table. My heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The lock screen flashed. October 14th. My wedding day. I squeezed my eyes shut. The phantom burn of poison still lingering in my throat. This wasn't a flashback. The heavy silk of the gown, the suffocating anxiety, the crisp autumn air drifting through the cracked window of the penthouse suite at the Plaza Hotel. It was all real. I had been reborn, sent back to the exact day I signed my life away. "Could you give me a moment, Bridget?" I managed to say, my voice eerily calm despite the hurricane of adrenaline ravaging my system. "Of course, sweetie." Wedding jitters. 10 minutes until you walk down the aisle," she chirped, gathering her brushes and slipping out of the room. The moment the heavy mahogany door clicked shut, I moved. In my past life, I had walked down that aisle, a naive lamb, to the slaughter. Today, I was the butcher. I knew Savannah's secrets now. I knew that right at this moment she was in the adjoining bridesmaid suite, likely texting Liam on a burner phone. I crept to the connecting door, which was slightly ajar, and peered through the crack. Savannah was facing the mirror, reapplying her Tom Ford lipstick, her clutch resting on the side table. As she stepped into the bathroom to check her hair, I slipped into the room, opened her clutch, and pulled out the sleek black burner phone. No passcode. They were that arrogant. I opened the encrypted Signal app. Liam, almost time. Is she ready? Savannah, clueless as always. The Hastings board seats are as good as ours tonight. Love you, Liam, love you more. See you at the altar. Then the real honeymoon starts with you. Bile rose in my throat, but I forced it down. I quickly air-dropped the screenshots to my own phone, wiped the transfer history, and slipped the burner back into her clutch. I was back in my suite before she ever emerged from the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, the blushing bride. Liam thought he had me cornered. He thought marrying me today would solidify his merger with Astor and Sinclair, a massive Wall Street hedge fund that was hesitant to back his tech company without the Hastings family name attached to it. Astor and Sinclair. A sharp, dangerous smile curved my lips. Nathaniel. Astor. Nathaniel was Liam's absolute nightmare. He was old New York money, a ruthless billionaire who looked at Liam like dirt on the bottom of his bespoke Oxfords. Liam had desperately invited Nathaniel to the wedding as a power play, hoping to force him into a social corner and secure his firm's backing for the Cross-T IPO. In my past life, Nathaniel had sat in the third row, looking profoundly bored, and left before the reception. If Liam wanted my family's wealth to buy his way into Nathaniel A's league, I was going to cut out the middleman entirely. I picked up my veil. I didn't just want to cancel the wedding. I wanted to publicly obliterate Liam Cross. I wanted to humiliate him in front of the 500 Forbes list elites sitting in that ballroom. I pinned the veil into my hair. It was time to get married. Just not to the groom. The doors to the grand ballroom at the plaza stood before me, towering and imposing. The muffled elegant strains of a live string quartet playing Pellbell's canon drifted through the heavy oak. My father, rest his soul, had passed away years ago, so I was walking down the aisle alone. Fitting, really. The wedding coordinator, a frantic woman with a headset, gave me a thumbs up. "Ready, Jamie, you look breathtaking." "I've never been more ready," I replied, my voice steady, devoid of the tremor that usually accompanied my anxiety. The heavy doors swung open. A collective gasp rippled through the room. It was a masterpiece of floral design. Thousands of white orchids cascaded from the ceiling. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across the faces of Manhattan's most elite, and flashbulbs popped from the press aloud in the back. And there, at the end of the long white carpet, stood Liam. He wore a custom Armani tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, a devastatingly handsome smile plastered across his face. To anyone else, he looked like a prince. To me, he looked like the man who had watched me suffocate on my own blood. To his left stood his groomsmen. To his right, my bridesmaids anchored by Savannah in her emerald green silk gown. She dabbed at a completely dry eye with a tissue, playing the part of the emotional cousin flawlessly. I began my walk. I didn't look at Liam. My eyes scanned the pews, bypassing the mayor, bypassing the CEO of Bloomberg, until I found him. Third row on the aisle, Nathaniel Astor. He was leaning back in his chair, exuding a cold, predatory grace. His raven hair was pushed back and his sharp aristocratic features were locked in an expression of utter indifference. He wore a dark navy three-piece suit that screamed old money. He was checking his platinum Patek Philippe watch, clearly calculating how soon he could leave this charade. I reached the altar. The music faded into a respectful silence. Liam reached out, taking my hands in his. His skin felt like ice against mine. I fought the visceral urge to recoil. "You look perfect," Liam whispered, his thumb grazing my knuckles. "So do you," I whispered back. A perfect liar. The Archbishop of New York himself was officiating. He stepped forward, opening his leather-bound book, his booming voice echoing through the silent ballroom. He spoke of love, of trust, of the merging of two lives. I let the words wash over me, waiting for my cue. I needed the timing to be absolutely flawless. And so the Archbishop finally intoned, looking out over the crowd. "If there is anyone here who can show just cause why these two should not be legally joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace." It was a formality, a tradition no one ever interrupted in real life. Until today, I slipped my hands out of Liam's grasp. The sudden movement made him blink in confusion. "I can," I said. My voice wasn't a shout, but in the dead silence of the ballroom, it cracked like a whip. A collective murmur immediately swept through the 500 guests. Savannah's jaw dropped. The Archbishop froze, his eyes widening. Liam let out a nervous chuckle, stepping closer to me. "Jaime, sweetheart, what are you doing? It's not the time for jokes." "I'm not joking, Liam," I said loudly, ensuring the microphones at the altar caught every word. I reached into the bodice of my gown and pulled out my phone. I held it up. "I think the fact that you've been sleeping with my maid of honor for 2 years and actively plotting to funnel my family's trust into your offshore UBS accounts is a fairly decent cause." Pandemonium. Gasps erupted from the front rows. Reporters in the back frantically started snapping photos. Savannah went pale, the emerald green of her dress suddenly looking sickening against her ashen skin. "Jaime, you're hysterical." Liam hissed his mask, slipping his eyes flashing with a violent panic. He reached for my arm. "Stop this right now. We are going to the back room." "Don't touch me," I snapped, stepping backward down the stairs of the altar. "The screenshots of your Signal chats with Savannah are currently being projected to the press via my assistant. Your IPO is dead, Liam, and so is this wedding." I didn't wait for his reaction. I turned my back on the man who killed me and walked straight down the aisle, but I didn't head for the exit. I stopped at the third row. Nathaniel Ader hadn't gasped. He hadn't muttered. He was sitting perfectly still, his piercing gray eyes locked onto me with a sudden, intense amusement. The boredom had completely vanished from his face. I stood before him, a runaway bride in a $1 million dress, my heart pounding, a frantic rhythm. "Mr. Astor," I said, my voice carrying over the chaotic buzzing of the ballroom. He tilted his head slightly, acknowledging me. "Miss Hastings." That was quite the theatrics, escaping a sinking ship. "More like blowing it out of the water," I replied, holding his gaze. "I know you want the controlling shares of Krosk's competitor to monopolize the tech sector, and I know Liam has been begging for your capital. Right now, Hastings Holdings is a free agent." Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. The businessman in him was instantly engaged. "And what is it you want, Jaime?" "Liam wanted to use my name to get to you," I said, leaning in slightly, ensuring only he and the immediately surrounding guests could hear the gravity of my offer. "I'm cutting him out. You want the Hastings board seats. You want to solidify your absolute control over Wall Street with my family's legacy backing you. I'm listening. Marry me." I said the words slipping out with desperate clarity. "Right here, right now in front of him. Make me an Astor and I will hand you the keys to my empire. We destroy Liam Cross together." The silence around us was deafening. The guests in the surrounding pews were holding their breath. At the altar, Liam was staring at us, his face purple with a mixture of rage and terror as he realized exactly who I was talking to. Nathaniel Astor looked at me. He looked at the frantic ruined groom at the altar. Then a slow, dark smirk spread across his handsome face. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with an elegant, unhurried motion. He was a full head taller than me, exuding absolute power. "Well, Miss Hastings," Nathaniel said, his voice, a smooth, rich baritone that sent a shiver down my spine. He offered me his arm. I never pass up a hostile takeover. "Shall we?" I placed my trembling hand in the crook of Nathaniel A's arm. The bespoke wool of his suit was a stark contrast to the cold, clammy grip Liam had held me with moments before. As Nathaniel and I turned to face the altar, the grand ballroom of the plaza erupted into sheer bedlam. "Jaime, have you lost your absolute mind?" Liam's voice cracked, echoing through the microphone. He was still foolishly clutching. He scrambled down the carpeted steps, his Armani tuxedo suddenly looking less like a prince's garb and more like a cheap costume. "Mr. Astor, please, my fiancé is just having a panic attack." The pressure of the day. "Your fiancé?" Nathaniel interrupted, his voice, not raised, yet it effortlessly sliced through the uproar of 500 gasping socialites and clicking cameras. "Just offered me a controlling interest in Hastings Holdings. A panic attack does not negotiate a 9-figure merger, Mr. Cross, but a betrayal certainly does." Savannah lunged forward from the bridesmaid lineup, her face contorted in an ugly clear's throat sneer. You're ruining everything over a misunderstanding. You forged those texts." Before Savannah could close the distance, 2 towering men in identical charcoal suits materialized from the shadows of the front row. Nathaniel's private security detail. They stepped seamlessly between me and my cousin, forming an impenetrable wall of muscle. Savannah slammed into one of them, bouncing off his chest like a rag doll, and stumbling backward in her Jimmy Choos. "Do not touch my bride," Nathaniel said smoothly. The word bride sent a shockwave through the room. The press in the back row began shouting questions, the flashes of their cameras turning the ballroom into a strobe-lit nightmare for Liam. "Mr. Astor, are you confirming a merger with Hastings Holdings? Jaime, is the wedding off, Liam? What about the SEC filing for Crossed?" Liam looked around wildly, the color draining entirely from his face. He realized in real time that the carefully constructed house of cards he had built using my money and my family's legacy was collapsing. He looked at the projection screen that my assistant, bless her ruthless heart, had managed to patch into the ballroom's AV system. There, 50 feet high, were the signal messages. "Savannah, the Hastings board seats are as good as ours tonight. Turn that off." Liam screamed at the AV booth, his sophisticated veneer completely shattered. "Turn it off right now." I didn't spare him another glance. I looked up at the Archbishop, who was standing frozen at the altar, clutching his leather-bound Bible, as if it could shield him from the scandal unfolding in his diocese. Nathaniel guided me up the steps. He looked at the Archbishop with the cold board authority of a man who owned half of Manhattan. "Your Eminence," Nathaniel said, checking his PC Felipe once more. "I have a board meeting in Tokyo tomorrow, and I'd prefer to attend it as a married man. We already have a valid marriage license graciously procured by my legal team 15 minutes ago when Miss Hastings' assistant tipped me off to this change in management." I blinked, looking up at him in shock. He had known. Nathaniel caught my gaze and offered a microscopic wicked smirk. "I never enter a room without knowing the leverage of everyone in it. Jaime, your assistant is very efficient. Now face forward." The Archbishop stammered, "Mr. Astor, I cannot simply, this is highly irregular. The church requires counseling preparation. The Astor Foundation will pledge $50 million to the cathedral's restoration fund by close of business today," Nathaniel stated flatly. "Skip to the vows, money talks. But Astoroni commands." The Archbishop swallowed hard, his eyes darting between the furious groom being restrained by security at the bottom of the steps and the billionaire holding my hand at the top. "Dearly beloved," the Archbishop rushed out, his voice shaking slightly. "Skip to the vows." Nathaniel repeated his tone, dropping an octave. "Do you," Nathaniel asked, "take Jaime Hastings to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Nathaniel said, never taking his eyes off mine. His gaze was a stormy gray, calculating, and sharp, yet strangely grounding. "And do you, Jaime Hastings, take Nathaniel A. to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked over my shoulder. Liam was being physically dragged out of the ballroom by Plaza security, screaming my name, his face purple with rage. Savannah was sobbing loudly on the floor. The emerald silk of her dress pulled around her in defeat. The Wall Street elite, the very people Liam had tried to impress, were watching him with utter disgust. His reputation was incinerated. I turned back to the man who was offering me the sword to finish the job. "I do," I said loud and clear. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife," the Archbishop said, rapidly wiping sweat from his brow. "Nathaniel didn't kiss me. We weren't lovers. We were a corporation. He simply offered me his arm again. Shall we, Mrs. Astor?" "Let's," I replied. We walked back down the aisle, a sea of flashing lights and shouted questions parting for us. The string quartet, entirely unsure of what to do, started frantically playing the traditional recessional march. It was a bizarre, triumphant soundtrack to my revenge. We bypassed the lobby and exited through a private side door on 58th Street, where a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom was idling at the curb. Nathaniel's security opened the heavy door, and I practically collapsed onto the butter-soft leather seats, the sheer weight of my Vera Wang gown pulling me down. Nathaniel slid in beside me, tapping the privacy glass partition. The driver immediately pulled away, leaving the chaotic swarm of paparazzi in our rear-view mirror. For a long moment, the only sound in the plush cabin was my ragged breathing. The adrenaline that had carried me through the ballroom was beginning to crash, leaving me shaking. I had done it. I had survived the day of my murder. I had ruined Liam. Nathaniel poured a glass of sparkling water from the car's minibar and handed it to me. Breathe, Jamie. The theatrics are over. Now the real work begins. I took a shaky sip. The cool water soothing my dry throat. You had a marriage license ready. My legal team drafted a digital contract the moment your assistant sent me the dossier on Liam's offshore accounts. Nathaniel said, leaning back and crossing his long legs. I recognize the opportunity. Cross stock is going to freefall on Monday morning when the market opens and the news of this scandal breaks. Astor and Sinclair will initiate a hostile takeover, buying up his company for pennies on the dollar. And what about my end of the bargain? I asked, sitting up straighter, shedding the terrified bride persona. I was a CEO now. You retain full control of Hastings Holdings, Nathaniel replied, his eyes narrowing in approval at my shift in demeanor. But you sign exclusive backing rights to my firm. Together, we monopolize the tech and finance sectors. In return, I give you the resources to legally and financially disembowel Liam Cross. I looked at the gold band he had slipped onto my finger, a temporary Cartier ring his assistant had undoubtedly fetched from a nearby boutique in record time. I don't just want him ruined. Nathaniel, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I remembered the cold floor of the Hamptons estate. I remembered the cyanide. I want him in a federal penitentiary. Nathaniel smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a shark smelling blood in the water. Then let's go on our honeymoon, he said. Our honeymoon was not a beach in the Maldives or a villa in Tuscany. It was the heavily encrypted soundproofed cabin of Nathaniel's Gulfstream G650ER cruising at 40,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean en route to Geneva, Switzerland. I had swapped my Vera Wang gown for a cashmere Loro Piana lounge set, though I kept the Cartier ring on my finger. The cabin was outfitted like a Wall Street trading floor. Snorts. 4 of Nathaniel's top forensic accountants were hunched over glowing monitors tracking the fallout of the wedding. Cross stock is plummeting in after-hours trading. One of the analysts called out, adjusting his headset. It's a bloodbath, Mr. Esta. Institutional investors are pulling out following the Page 6 and Bloomberg exposés. Nathaniel was sitting across from me at the mahogany conference table nursing a glass of Glenfiddich. Excellent. Let it bleed out until Monday. Then we buy the rotting corpse. He turned his piercing gaze to me. Now about these UBS accounts. In my previous life, Liam had carefully hidden the money he embezzled from the Hastings Trust. It had taken months for my family's lawyers to find the breadcrumbs after my death, by which point Liam had already laundered it. But I retained the memory of those legal documents. I knew exactly where he hid it. Account number 88492B routed through a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Apex Ventures. I recited from memory, sliding a legal pad across the table. He transferred $40 million from my grandfather's blind trust last Tuesday. Savannah was the secondary signatory. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, impressed. He snapped his fingers and his lead accountant immediately began typing frantically. If we lock the accounts now, we can prove the wire fraud to the SEC and the FBI before he has a chance to move the capital. I explained, feeling a dark thrill of vindication coursing through my veins. Mr. Astor, the accountant, interrupted, his voice tight. Someone is currently attempting to access the Apex Ventures account. They're trying to initiate a wire transfer to a non-extradition country. Liam, I breathed. He was panicking. He knew his reputation was gone, so he was trying to take the money and run. Block the transfer, Nathaniel ordered. Route the security ping directly to the FBI Cybercrimes Division. Tag it with the evidence dossier Jaime's assistant compiled. Done. The accountant confirmed a moment later. The transfer is frozen. The Swiss authorities have flagged the account for investigation of international wire fraud. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was over. He was trapped. Suddenly, my secure satellite phone, which Nathaniel had provided me, began to vibrate against the mahogany table. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Nathaniel nodded at me. Put it on speaker. I pressed the green button. Hello, Jamie. Oh my God, Jamie, please. Liam's voice echoed through the cabin. He sounded frantic, breathless, completely unhinged. The smooth, charismatic tech bro was gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered rat. Hello, Liam, I said coldly. Jamie, you have to call off the dogs. He begged, the sound of sirens wailing faintly in the background of his call. My accounts are frozen. The board of Crosstech just voted to oust me as CEO. Savannah took my car and left me at the hotel. You won. Okay. You humiliated me. Just let me have the severance and let me leave the country. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. You stole $40 million from my family, Liam. You slept with my cousin in my bed. And in another lifetime, you poured poison into my champagne and watched me choke to death. There was a dead silence on the line. What? What are you talking about? Liam stammered, his confusion genuine. He didn't know about the murder. He hadn't committed it yet. To him, I sounded insane. But I knew, and that was all that mattered. It means I'm not just ruining your company, Liam. I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. I'm taking your freedom. The FBI is already tracking your location based on the IP address you just used to try and access the UBS accounts. Jamie, wait. Goodbye, Liam. Enjoy prison. I hear they don't serve Dom Perignon. I pressed end. The silence in the jet was absolute. The accountants were staring at their screens, pretending they hadn't just heard me sound like a mob boss. I looked up to find Nathaniel staring at me. His glass of scotch was forgotten on the table. The icy, calculating billionaire demeanor had cracked, revealing a look of profound, intense fascination. You are Nathaniel started seemingly searching for the word magnificently terrifying. You haven't seen anything yet, Mr. Astor, I replied, leaning back in my plush leather seat, finally feeling the phantom grip of death release my throat. Nathaniel stood up, walked around the table, and took the seat directly next to mine. He reached out his large, warm hand covering mine, his thumb brushing against the gold Cartier band he had placed there hours ago. I believe this corporate merger is going to be incredibly fruitful, Mrs. Astor, he murmured, his stormy gray eyes, locking onto mine with a heat that had nothing to do with business. I didn't pull away. In my past life, I married for love, and it killed me. This time, I married for power, for vengeance, and for survival. But looking at Nathaniel Astor, the man who had just helped me orchestrate the greatest revenge in high society history, without blinking an eye, I realized something dangerously thrilling. I might just end up falling in love with my husband after all. That's the end of my story, from a betrayed bride to a powerful CEO married to a billionaire who helped me secure ultimate revenge. Liam got exactly what he deserved, a cold prison cell. If you love this story of hard karma and sweet payback, smash that like button right now. Make sure to subscribe and share this video for more real-life drama stories. See you next time.